All right, let's dive into the world of software development. It's this amazing space full of incredible innovation, but it's also a place where projects can just go completely, spectacularly wrong. We've all heard the horror stories, right? Maybe you've even been in one. So that kind of begs the big question.
I mean, it's so frustrating, isn't it? A project kicks off with all this energy and promise, but then somewhere along the line, it just gets completely bogged down. Delays, budgets getting blown out of the water, people not talking to each other. It feels like there's gotta be a better way to do things. So what are the traps that everyone seems to fall into?
Okay, so what's the recipe for a total project disaster? Well, it usually starts with a few classic ingredients. First off, you've got friction between the customers and the developers. They're just not speaking the same language. Then, you've got that classic blunder. The project is already late, so management's solution is to throw more people at it. Spoiler alert, that almost never works. And all of this leads to these huge process mistakes that just completely tank the team's motivation. It's a guaranteed path to failure. So, because of all that frustration with these slow, clunky, and often failing projects, a whole new way of thinking started to emerge. It was a philosophy built not on these rigid, long-term plans, but on speed, on flexibility, and on working together. And it's called Rapid Application Development, or, as you'll hear it, RAD.
Now, what's really cool here is the definition itself. It's a high-speed adaptation. See, RAD isn't about just tossing out all the rules. It's about taking that traditional step-by-step model and just turbocharging it. And the secret to that speed? It's all in the component-based construction. Seriously, think of it like building with a huge box of Legos instead of trying to carve a giant sculpture out of a single block of marble. It's just faster.
And this little chart, it shows the difference perfectly. With the old school model, you just go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, and the customer, well, they might not see anything until the very end. But with RAD, it's totally different. It's a cycle, it's iterative. You're getting customer feedback all the time because a working model, a prototype, is the absolute center of the whole process. It's the difference between waiting a year for a big, scary surprise versus seeing real progress every couple weeks.
So you might be wondering, how does this whole high-speed thing not just fly off the rails? It sounds like it could be chaos, right? But actually, there's a really clear structure that keeps it all together. Let's break down how it actually works. You can think of it like planning a road trip. First up is business modeling. Basically, where are we going and what are the key stops we need to make? Then you've got data modeling. Okay, what kind of car do we need for this trip and what stuff do we need to pack? Next is process modeling. This is the actual route, the turn-by-turn directions to connect all our stops. And only then do you get to application generation, which is, actually driving the car. And finally, testing and turnover. You're checking the tires, making sure everything works before you hand the keys over. But if you strip away all those formal phases, the real heart of RAD, the engine that makes it go, is this incredibly simple, powerful little loop. You build something, you show it to the user, you get their feedback, and you repeat. It's that constant cycle, that loop that pushes the project forward and makes sure what you're building is what the customer actually wants. Now, this all sounds pretty fantastic, right? Fast, efficient, the customer's happy. But like any tool, RAD isn't some magic wand you can wave at every problem. It has some incredible strengths, for sure, but it also has some really specific weaknesses you need to know about. So let's get the full picture here. The pros are pretty much exactly what you'd guess from a model that's built for speed. You get your product out the door faster, which obviously cuts down on development time. Productivity shoots up because you're reusing components and the teams are super focused. And the big one? Customer satisfaction is way higher because they're in the loop the whole time. There's no big disappointing reveal at the end. This whole approach directly attacks those classic mistakes we talked about in the beginning. But here's the other side of that coin. RAD asks a lot from the people involved. You absolutely need a team of highly skilled developers who can just hit the ground running. And you also need customers who are ready and able to give you constant, clear feedback. This isn't a see you in 6 months kind of deal. And finally, it's just not the right tool for every single job. If you've got a massive, monolithic project that you can't break into smaller pieces, RAD is probably not going to be a good fit. So that brings us to the most practical question of all. When you look at all the pros and all the cons, when should you actually think about using the RAD model? Because it's definitely not for every project, but for some situations, it's an absolutely perfect match. Think of this as your quick checklist. RAD really shines when you already have a pretty good idea of what the system needs to do. It's perfect for any project you can slice up into smaller, functional chunks. The sweet spot for the timeline is pretty short, we're talking 2 to 3 months. And maybe the most important thing of all, you need to have the right people on board, a skilled team and engaged users who are ready to work together. If you can tick off all those boxes, RAD can be a real game changer.
So when it all comes down to it, the RAD philosophy really forces us to ask one single, really challenging question. In a world that's always demanding more speed, is a product that's good enough right now better than one that's perfect but delivered way later? It's a trade-off, really, between perfection and progress. And in the world we live in today, that's a question every single team needs to answer. I hope this gave you some things to think about. Thanks for joining me.